Hello everyone and welcome to another live edition here of my channel. I have a lot of exciting information as usual, and I just want to thank everyone for your wonderful comments, for coming by and joining the live presentations. I want to remind everyone, if you have any questions during the live presentation, I'm here to answer any of your questions. I want to apologize for my voice as well. I've been doing a lot of teaching online and my voice is a little worn out. But so I have a lot of information today about Goya, one of my favorite artists. Today I'm going to be talking about his palette. I'm going to be talking about his materials and some of his processes. So this is not really a demo that I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be doing a demo later on in another live presentation. But today I want to focus on the exploration of materials. So let's just go ahead and get started. I have some images here. Let's just switch the camera now. And I want to begin by sharing the references once again. I have a wonderful book here that I'm always sharing, and it's because it's just a go-to guide for Spanish art during the 17th century. Francisco Pacheco, El Arte de la Pintura. A lot of the information that I'm going to be sharing today, I'm taking from here. So just in particular, a passage that comes to mind, and it's a description of the preparation of a ground, a suitable ground to work with. And the reason that I'm referring to Pacheco is because Goya is, even 200 years after, or about 150 years after the death of Pacheco, Goya is referring and using a lot of the instructions and materials that Pacheco is describing. One in particular, his use of a red ground or una base de barro, which is essentially a clay ground. And I did a lot of research for this live presentation, and there's a paragraph here that describes the preparation of a Spanish red ground using what is called civilian earth or tierra de Sevilla, which is a clay found in the south of Spain. And Pacheco gives instructions to prepare the canvas with rabbit skin glue. From there, you're supposed to apply one layer of priming and let it dry. And you're supposed to pumice this surface, and then you're supposed to apply two more layers, perhaps 2 or 3 layers in total. And this results in a very, very smooth surface. I've tried this ground many times, and it's a wonderful ground to work with. And it seems that Goya is sort of doing a hybrid ground between this and perhaps some of the Venetian grounds where they're using red earth, perhaps red lead, and Dolomite, which is the Dolomite is not mentioned by Pacheco, but it is mentioned by Palomino in the sense that they use some sort of calcite or some sort of magnesium-based earth or calcium carbonate. So I recreated this ground for the live presentation today, and before I show you the video that recreates this ground, this beautiful ground, I want to talk a little bit about just Goya in general. I mean, his method of painting. So far, throughout the whole span of all the lives that we've been doing, I've been sort of visiting different painters such as Vermeer and Rembrandt and highlighting their different techniques. And it's really interesting to see how each individual artist uses beautiful techniques that they declare, their own techniques, if you will, in their own unique use of materials. In this case, Goya seems to focus on this sort of orangey ground. And just to begin, he seems to use a mantelillo type support. I'm going to show you an image here. Mantelillo is a linen that is typical of Spanish painting during the 16th through the 18th century. This is look at the beautiful pattern of this fabric. And for those of you that are joining, I want to thank everyone. And again, I see that a lot of you are logged in and coming by. So again, thank you for your wonderful support and for your visits. So this is a mantelillo, and I'm going to be sharing at the end of the live presentation. I'm going to be sharing a PDF with wonderful information. Unfortunately, the PDF is in Spanish, and of course, I will not be able to translate. I'm doing the translations here live, but for those of you that speak Spanish, you'll be able to read it. So this is just a detail from one of Goya's paintings. I believe this one's from Fernando VII, and this is a peculiar piece of fabric. I want to show you just a comparison of a piece of fabric that we have here today. And this is just a regular piece of linen. And look at the difference of the texture. And the reason that Goya favors, and a lot of painters favor this type of mantelillo fabric, is because apparently the rolls of linen were larger, and they were able to do larger pieces, work with larger paintings without having to sew pieces together, or retazos, which they're called retazos, and you have to sort of unite two pieces to create a very large painting, resulting in a very sort of ugly seam. So you see that Velázquez does this in a lot of his paintings, but Goya seems to have favored this type of mantelillo fabric specifically for the portrait of Fernando VII. And this is interesting because you see that the fabric has a lot of texture. So he would have had to apply maybe 2 to 3 layers to sort of create a very even texture on his paintings. Now, he doesn't use this type of mantelillo fabric in all his paintings, but in some of his paintings he does. Specifically, the most important paintings, he seems to favor this mantelillo fabric. El Greco also, early on during the late 15th century, he seems to have favored this mantelillo as well. A lot of painters from Spain, and I don't believe you could find this fabric today. I've been doing. You could find a twill weave from Dick Blick materials, but this mantelillo is unique, and I imagine it's very expensive if you can't find it. So I'll keep researching. Maybe we could find piece of mantelillo fabric at some point, and I'll recreate a whole ground, and just to see how it behaves. So this is an important consideration because this will really affect how many layers of ground you'll have to apply to this type of fabric. And that's important to know here. Now, a lot of the fabrics from the 17th century are very sort of archaic and very rough. So painters are, begin using imprimaciones, or primings that are double or triple primings. Pacheco here describes a triple priming, and you could just imagine a very rough fabric. You have to sort of fill the weave, so that would result in a sort of a thick priming. But he describes this priming of clay as being very durable. He even gives a reference of time where he says that some of the paintings that he has done early on and many years in his youth are still in really good shape, and he could account for that. So he's sort of thinking about the longevity of the painting, which is very interesting for an author of his time. These painters are interested in the longevity of their works of art. So in this ground, Goya's paintings as a whole seem to be in good condition. So I have tried the red ground. I love it. It's a very fast ground to work with, and it seems that Goya's paintings are in really good shape. I've seen a lot of his paintings in Spain, and the ground seems to be somewhat flexible, and it's not too dark, so you're able to get a little bit of a luminosity, and I'm going to be talking about that. So really interesting. Now, just in terms of the drawing, how did Goya goes about doing starting his paintings. And I know there's a lot of references to grisaille painting and, just working very loosely. In the last Greco presentation that I had, I worked with, very schematic drawing. And in some of the paintings that I've studied, I couldn't find a consensus. It seems that Goya uses an underdrawing, and it seems like in other paintings he just goes directly onto the canvas and draws directly with the brush. And that's important to know because, even myself, I find myself working with sometimes an underdrawing if it's a very complex drawing, or directly on the canvas. It depends. So it seems that Goya is doing the same thing. And he's commissioned to paint a portrait of Fernando VII. And it seems that Fernando VII was not, in the information that I gathered from this document that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. This is a journal that describes the restoration and the analysis of pigments and of this painting in particular, Fernando VII. He seems to have prepared a drawing, a preliminary drawing, and I want to share this image with you guys. Now, this is a very quick schematic drawing, and in some letters that are published in this journal, Goya seems to complain that he only has about 2 hours to work on this drawing of a natural, a live session with the king. He doesn't seem to be very happy about it, and he produces this sketch, and this very sketch seems to be the only reference that he uses to execute this wonderful painting of the king. And it's interesting, and the reason that I'm sharing this because there's instances where artists are perhaps working directly from life, but there's evidence, conclusive evidence that Goya does not work from life. In this particular portrait, he only has this sketch, and from there, he seems to have transferred this drawing to the painting of Fernando VII. And the reason that we know that is because there's X-rays that are published in this wonderful journal. So let's just take a look at those underdrawings, and it's interesting. So here you see an underdrawing that it has been reinforced with a fine brush, perhaps with just a line, a dark line. It seems like he's probably working with a mahl stick to reinforce this drawing, and the drawing is transferred indeed. It seems that he reverses the drawing. He puts the head in looking in the opposite direction. So you could do that by just simply using a piece of carbon paper, which I have a full live presentation dedicated to underdrawing. So if you want to check that video out, you could find it in the catalog of videos in this channel. So you could simply just take a drawing and use a piece of carbon in between that drawing, and then with the stylus, you could transfer it onto the ground. And this will, result in a very clean transfer. And then you could reinforce the drawing with paint. And it seems like he did this, he used this technique for this particular painting. And then he produces a sketch, a very quick schematic sketch, what I call an oil sketch or a preparatory oil sketch to figure out the composition. And so let's just see if we have that oil sketch. So there's the oil sketch, and I imagine this is so interesting to me as an artist because you have a situation where Goya is just taking, just a very schematic drawing and sort of collaging together. I imagine that he probably had a mannequin, which Pacheco does describe the use of the mannequin. He describes the use of the mannequin by Goya and, by Rivera and by other painters from the era. But he does say that he prefers the live model always in front. such as his son-in-law uses, such as Velázquez. And I imagine that Velázquez probably had a live model always in front of him, but it seems that these paintings were always collaged together. Here you see how he's just interested in the whole, in a composition. So he's assembling, the landscape, the horse, all in a small sketch which he will use as reference in combination with the portrait sketch. And there's evidence to suggest that he may have used also, drawings of horses. So he probably was, had access to a stable where he could use an actual horse, and they could post this horse on, on a piece of wood or something, and then just do some quick sketches and just assemble all these images together to create a cohesive image or a composition. This is so interesting because these are ways that you could, use to assemble images. And there's Goya's a narrative painter, and it's interesting. I really love his style because he doesn't really seem to copy nature. His paintings are very mannered. It's interesting. He's interested, in it seems like the pictorial idea, that what the Spanish call un dialecto, which is just sort of the idea of expressing something, and or a diálogo, that's the terminology in Spanish. And this is a particular of Spanish painters. They're interested in the idea of poetry, idea-driven paintings, and not so much, perhaps an academic view of the world where, they're just painting exactly what they see. Goya's here recreating that scene and creating tension and just a wonderful composition, just to narrate. So it's just so interesting. Now, in terms of the ground, and again, in this journal technical journal that I downloaded from the internet, they have chemical analysis of this painting in particular. And remember that I'm showing you the sketch. I'm going to be sharing an image of the finished painting when I finish the live presentation. And they find a red ground. In a lot of his paintings, Goya seems to have used a red ground. And I want to share an image from a sketch that Goya executes. Let's see. So here you see an unfinished painting by Goya, and these paintings are displayed in the Prado Museum. I have been to the Prado Museum many times, and I always enjoy these paintings because it just shows you the boldness of Goya. There you see a very, very sort of light, intense orange ground, and there's no underdrawing at all. It seems like the drawing is just executed with a brush, and there's there's no grisaille. It's just direct painting on the surface, and he does seem to have used sort of a cooler color on the flesh, sort of a grayish flesh color to begin with. Perhaps he retouched this color on top with a second layer, perhaps not. I believe that these are one session or maybe two session sketches. And he seems to have a bunch of these studies for some of his paintings on this orange ground. This is the ground that I've recreated. Now, the formula that they document in the technical journal is as follows. He seems to have used, and let's just go ahead and take a look at some of these pigments here. The orange ground that you just saw is very different in terms of formula than the typical Spanish ground from the 17th century. So I did a few experiments. I have here a red ochre. Okay, this is a red ochre from France, and I gathered another red ochre here, or excuse me, this is an orange ochre from France as well. Okay, and the Spanish red ochre that I tried initially was just too dark and too dead. So I came to the conclusion in the technical journal, they describe it as a red earth, but it doesn't seem that uh, the Spanish red earth that I have available, which I've gotten from a lot of Spanish suppliers, sort of match those tones that are described or that I saw in Goya's painting. So the closest one was this orange ground from France. And it seems that perhaps Goya had access to, an orange type of ochre, which is typical of pottery in Spain. So perhaps they're using some sort of potter's clay, which is also described by a lot of manuscripts from the 17th century, specifically in Italy. So I found myself mixing the orange ochre with a little bit of the this red ochre, and even a little bit of yellow ochre to sort of manipulate the color to arrive at the right color or a color that was close. It seems that he uses a variety of reds. It's not just one ground, one orange ochre, or one ochre ground. In particular, I mean, he's not using the same ground all throughout all his paintings. Some grounds seem to be more red than others, as you will see in some of his paintings, as I share in the video. And another material that I found peculiar, as an addition to, well, two more materials that I found peculiar in some of his ground formulations, he uses red lead. And this was in particular from natural pigments. I have made this pigment. You just take stack processed lead white and you roast it at least 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. Sometimes the temperatures vary, but you could essentially create this color by roasting red lead. It is a very dangerous process, so I don't recommend that you do that. Instead, you could just order the pre-made pigment, and it seems that Titian, El Greco, and Goya use this as a dryer, and also it will affect the color. It will make it more orangey. So you have to be careful, because if you add too much of this red lead, you could get cracking. It's just too powerful of a dryer. So you have to be very, very careful with it. So it's just a small amount of red lead. Another addition to this ground formulations of Goya's is Dolomite. And again, this is interesting, because in Velázquez they find mostly calcium carbonate, and same with Caravaggio. But in a lot of the Venetian painters, such as Titian and a lot of other Venetian painters, they find Dolomite. So it's suspected that this was an adulterant. Goya is using a lead white, and it could be that the lead white was adulterated with Dolomite. But working with this material before, this is a wonderful material. It gives a lot of luminosity, and it acts a little bit as a calcium carbonate. This is essentially a magnesium-based calcium carbonate. So this has the ability to absorb oil and to neutralize, make the paint stabilize the paint. So I used a little bit of it, and it made a big difference. It made a wonderful ground. So these are the materials that they find in this ground of Goya. So the red lead, the dolomite, red earth, it could be yellow, orange, or red earth, or perhaps a type of earth that was sort of a hybrid. And they also find white lead. The white lead is a typical addition. Pacheco does mention the addition of white lead just to make it a little bit more consistent, to give it, as he describes it, to give it body. So this is interesting to figure out that although he's using the idea of a red ground, such as described by Pacheco and used by a lot of Spanish artists, he is making his own formula. And that formula results in a particular color. So I have a video for you guys that I want to share, and this has the whole process, and I'm just going to go ahead and narrate this video as I usually do. Remember that these preparations take a lot of time, and you'll see here that I use a double ground. And if you're going to use a double ground, there's just no way that you could do this in a day. You know, you have to let it dry. I use Pacheco's instructions of using a double ground, okay? And I had to let it dry for a while, and then so this, you know, the first layer dry for quite a bit of time, and so I've had to do a lot of preparation, and that's one of the reasons that I get behind on my live presentations. So, all right, so let's just take a look at the video. Here you see the red earth. Okay, I'm mixing it with linseed oil, which is the binding that I use. There's the red lead, and just a little bit of red lead. Okay, and this will act as a dryer. There's the white lead, another dryer, and it will make the value a lot lighter. And there's the dolomite, just a little bit of dolomite, and I'm mixing it with a palette knife. And remember that I will mold this. I don't have a video here included the mulling process, but you always have to mull these pastes in order to make them a lot more consistent. And there I'm applying the red earth right over the linen ground with the palette knife or spatula, which is typical of the way that these primings were applied. And they find the arcs of the priming. So there I've let it dry now for at least 3 months, and I'm scraping the surface with the palette knife, with the spatula, to get rid of any imperfection. Okay, I'm not pumicing. It doesn't seem that Goya pumiced, but I am scraping it. There I'm applying the lighter. It's much, much lighter, the second ground, okay, because I want that luminosity. You could even make it, you know, you could add even yellow ochre and make it a lot lighter. And there you see the difference in tone. That first layer is just red ochre, okay? And then the second layer is the formula that I just gave you. And I'm just methodically preparing this surface, making it as smooth as I can. This takes a lot of skill. Make sure that there's no knife marks. And there you see the different types of red ochre. The boy has a darker red ochre. You can see it there around the shoe, the exposed ground. And Goya is leaving the ground around the shirt, which creates a beautiful vibration in the painting. So just a really wonderful technique. And it doesn't seem that he goes through great trouble to cover that. I mean, he just covers the ground and he leaves it exposed, so it acts as sort of a halftone. I really love this technique. It's not a technique unique to Goya. Caravaggio used this technique. Velázquez used it early on. A lot of painters from Brescia used it. So, but Goya makes a few innovations, and I want to talk about the pigments that he is using. One of the first pigments that is fundamentally different from a lot of painters from the 17th century is this Naples yellow. And the Naples yellow is very similar to the lead tin yellow, but it seems to be brighter. Okay, and he's using, and I mentioned in the last, I believe it was the last live stream, I did a live stream about the palettes, and this pigment is mentioned there as a color important to Goya's palette, and he used this color in combination with the Prussian blue or raw sienna to make the green tones, the green tonalities. But one color that really sticks out, this color might have been available and most likely was available to painters from the 17th century, although it was not used as extensively as lead tin yellow. But this color, this is a new color in the palette, this Prussian blue. Both of these pigments you could find through Natural Pigments, and they're, again, a reputable paint brand. Just wonderful products. And I usually, when it comes to pigments like this, specifically Prussian Blue or Naples Yellow, that are more involved processes, I don't really manufacture those. I just get them from a reputable manufacturer such as Kramer Pigments or Natural Pigments or even Seki. So I highly recommend those suppliers if you guys are interested in experimenting with these materials. So I'm going to go ahead and make this Prussian Blue, which is a new color in the palette of the 18th century artist. This color in particular was heavily used by painters from this era. It seems like by this time, painters are not really using azurite anymore. And even the ultramarine blue that I've mentioned here many times is no longer favorable, because this is probably a lot less expensive and easier to manufacture and readily available for these painters. So let's just go ahead now. I want to remind you again, this color doesn't seem to be a toxic color, but as a precaution, I always wear a respirator. In this case, I'm just wearing a respirator, so you could hear my voice. So I apologize if my voice is a little distorted. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of color. Look at what a beautiful color that is. Okay. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of color. For those of you that are wondering how I prepare a lot of these colors, it was quite simple. I want to use a lot. And I'm going to go ahead and use my refined linseed oil, which I have a whole live presentation dedicated to the refining of the linseed oil. Okay, so you could use a dropper. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get some paper towel here. You'll need the paper towel in order to clean your palette knife. And now I don't like to just pour the oil. And what I do is I just clean the palette knife. You could use a dropper. I don't have one right now. So this seems to work quite well, just using the palette knife. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and test out. I don't know this pigment very well, so I have used other brands, Prussian Blue from other manufacturers, but I don't know this one in particular. Each manufacturer has their formula, and I don't know how much oil this is going to absorb. So I'm going very, very slowly. And I can already tell you this is a beautiful, beautiful color, and just a wonderful addition to. Now, I haven't talked about Prussian Blue and how it's manufactured. And the reason is because I am not too familiar with this color. The manufacturer, I've never manufactured this particular color. But Natural Pigments has a wonderful website where you could investigate the manufacturer, how it was made. And it's a wonderful resource for those of you that are interested in the pigments. And I'm just going very slowly, just making sure to wet the pigment as the first step in making paint. And you don't want to put a lot of oil. You just want to tread carefully with the oil. And what I like to do is, one of the reasons that I like to make my own pigments is because I could control how thick, how fluid the paint is. So you're able to, let's see here. I could already tell you that I have here about 2 more drops, 3 more drops of oil. The color does absorb quite a bit of oil, so just be aware of that. There's colors that absorb a lot of oil, and there's other colors that do not. And that's part of the fun of making paint. You get to know these colors intimately. So there you see that I'm just working the color with the binder, and the paint just seems dry. Seems very, very dry. That's okay, because we need to mull the paint. If you don't mull the paint, you're not going to get the right consistency. And when you mull the paint, I mean, you could just see the texture there. It doesn't seem very, very fluid at all. But as you work the color, you begin to see how the color changes. So what I like to do first, before I do any mulling, I just work it with the palette knife. And once I have it pretty consistent, I just begin to mull the color. So what I'm going to do now is, now that I have it pretty well, and look at what a beautiful bright blue that is. Just trying to capture it in the light. Okay. Wonderful blue. So you could just imagine painters from this era, and there's even a sound. And just look at what a gorgeous color that is. Okay. So mulling the colors is really nothing more than just working the particles of paint and oil, of pigment and oil together to create a cohesive mixture, right? And there you can see how the color became a lot more fluid. And this is a small amount of color. You don't really need heavy mulling. But this is a gorgeous color. And I'm going to gather it here. So a beautiful, beautiful color, very bright. This color will deteriorate with time, although it seems to have been pretty permanent in a lot of Goya's paintings. But that's important to know. I mean, a lot of artists today perhaps, do not use this color because they're afraid that the color is going to deteriorate. So, don't be afraid of that. Just, if you want to use the material, just make sure that you're using, if you're afraid that the color will not hold it, to the test of time, just try to use it sparingly. But it's definitely not as bad as smalt. So just a beautiful color in general. And I just want to go ahead and make a test here with some white. I'm going to use a little bit of titanium white just to show you the color. Titanium white is a lot whiter than white lead, so let's see here. Just look what a beautiful color that is. And that is exactly what I observed in a lot of Goya's paintings. Especially, he works with this blue in the sash of a lot of of his paintings. He paints all. He's very good at painting these passages of blue in garments, and this is very, very similar to the blue that I've observed. So just a beautiful color, the Prussian blue. And if you're going to mix this with, let's see here. Let's say you wanted to mix it with a raw sienna color, excuse me, or a yellow ochre color. Let me show you here what type of color that gives you in terms of greens. Look what a beautiful green that is. This is a brighter green than you could achieve with azurite or some of the more classical pigments. So very consistent. This is a mixture that he uses constantly for a lot of his paintings, the landscapes. Now I want to mention too that Goya uses a sort of a pinkish ground, and he's not only using the red ground. He's using, and I want to show you here the palette, some of the ground mixture that I prepared. Okay, and by just taking this ground and mixing it with white pigment such as white lead, you could achieve this sort of beautiful pink. So this is another wonderful ground that he was. It's like sort of a pinkish salmon ground. And this is typical of a lot of his paintings as well. So it's not just this orange ground that he was using, he's also using this wonderful pinkish ground. It's sort of like an orangey pinkish color, and it results in a sort of a clear, for landscape specifically, for paintings that are meant to have a landscape in the background. He seems to have used this sort of pinkish ground. You could also use, if you're wanting to use, a red that is a lot cooler, and all this is consistent with chemical analysis that they find. So I'm going to prepare a red ochre here so you can see how the color changes. Just mix a little bit of red ochre. Okay. These are all pigments that he would have had available. And in the next live demonstration, I'm going to be doing a recreation of a Goya demonstration. So let's see, using these very materials. So this is a red ochre ground with nothing but just red ochre. Or excuse me, a red ochre color. And look what a wonderful color that is. I've mentioned this color many times here, and it's a color that is used by a lot of Spanish painters from the 17th century. Just a wonderful, wonderful color. It's beautiful. I'm just going to go ahead and mix it with oil. I won't mull it, but I just want to show you the color that you could achieve by just putting this color, mixing this color with a little bit of black and white. You could achieve this beautiful sort of purplish, pinkish tone for your grounds. So I have here red ochre. Look at the tone difference. So if you use this color, let's see here. And again, these are quick demonstrations. I want to remind everyone that these are very quick demonstrations. By no means, it's a class, but it's just introduction to some of the techniques of these great painters. And if you're interested in more formal class, you could log on to my website, luisborreroart.com, and there you could, find out about my summer workshops. I have a summer workshop right now where we're, exploring classical techniques of drawing and painting. So look at the beautiful pink that you could achieve. You could use this as a ground, and if you add just a tiny bit of that Prussian blue, instead of black, let's just add a tiny bit of that Prussian blue just to show you the wonderful color that you could achieve for the ground. It makes it a lot, makes this wonderful grayish color. So just another use for that Prussian. Look what a beautiful gray. It's like a pinkish gray color. And it seems that Goya used perhaps a mixture like this. He could have used black because it's, a lot more inexpensive. So just a wonderful color for the ground. So he wasn't just using the orange ground. He was also using this sort of pinkish color for his lighter paintings. So, and in later on in his life, it seems that he's using black, and there's tremendous changes in Goya's life. He seems to have favored black, and it seems that he just paints right on a wall with oil paints. And this is towards his later years. He was becoming deaf, and that has a profound effect on his techniques. So very interesting to explore all these techniques. And I just wanted to give you sort of an overall, view of his materials in preparation for the demonstration that I'm going to be doing. So I think we have some questions here, and let's see. Let's see here. So, David, thank you for coming by. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. So, let's see. Kelly, I believe it's Kelly. Thank you for coming by. And Sweaty Palms, again, thank you for coming by. Thank you for your wonderful support. And let's see, Grupo Antiguos Maestros, gracias. Thank you for being here. And yeah, Gainsborough also used Prussian blue. That's correct. Antiguos Maestros. And yeah, it's a blue that just by the 18th century becomes very popular. Even painters from France, they adapt this blue, and by the 19th century, they introduced the more modern blues such as ultramarine, the synthetic ultramarine. But this is a wonderful color. I have never included this color in my palette, and I have to confess, I'm transformed by this color. I love it. So it's a color that I could see myself using. I've always used for my in my student years. I use synthetic ultramarine and even cobalt blue and cerulean, but I have never used the Prussian blue. So this is a beautiful color, and look what a beautiful combination that is. So yeah, so I believe we have one more question here. Is it okay, Prussian? Is it okay, Prussian, to add for flesh to bring down chroma? Yes, I imagine that you could use the Prussian blue to sort of cool off the mixtures. You saw here how I used, I took the red ochre. So I took white, red ochre, which is a typical flesh mixture, and I just brought a little bit of that Prussian blue, and it made it beautiful. Just a beautiful gray, cool color. So yes, this color is just wonderful. I imagine you could use it for that purpose as well. So yeah, a lot of great information. And again, we continue to explore more and more painters. Before I say goodbye, I want to tell you a little bit about my courses on Udemy. For a lot of you that are coming by and that are interested in something a lot more formal, I want to tell you about my courses. I have 3 courses. I'm preparing more courses right now to publish. So, and specifically about the art of painting. So check those out. Again, I want to thank everyone for. I have, excuse me, I have one last comment here or question from Sweaty Palms. Is that leaning to green? Is that leaning towards green like phthalo blue? Um, it it's not as intense as phthalo blue. It seems to have just the right amount of chroma. That's what I'm enjoying about it, because I don't really like phthalo colors. I will be honest. They seem to get into everything, and you know, I have a lot of artist friends that use phthalo, and I don't follow them there. I don't like the phthalo colors, although I'm sure you could do wonderful things with them. But for this sort of subtle mixtures of flesh, you want colors that are low in chroma. And this color, although it's high in chroma, it seems to be balanced beautifully. I mean, you saw that I just brought a little bit of the color there, and it didn't take over the mixture. It just gave me the right amount of chroma, of neutrality. So, and it's more effective than black, because the black could essentially kill the color. So, wonderful, wonderful color to use. And I just, I'm. This is the first time, I confess, this is the first time that I'm using it, because I was aware that a lot of 18th century painters used it, and I was not aware of how beautiful this color really is. Um, which I have another question from Scott. Scott, thank you for coming by. I really appreciate the visit. Which black did Goya use most regularly? They find mostly vine black. A lot of the chemical analysis of a lot of Spanish painters point to the use of vine black. Mostly, vine black or lamp black. The painters from the north seem to have favored bone black, although Spanish manuscripts do mention the use of, and Francisco Pacheco does mention negro de humo, negro de hueso, which is bone black. So it seems that they had access to the three blacks, which is bone black, lamp black, and um, bone black. Bone black, lamp black, and vine black, excuse me. So let's see, another question from Grupo Antiguos Maestros. Grupo Antiguos Maestros, gracias por estar aquí. Muchos saludos. Thank you for being here. Is red ochre similar to Venetian red? This red ochre that I'm using now, I should probably do a live presentation fully dedicated to red ochre, because I still don't have the final word on red ochres. There's such a range, you know. Even here in my home country in Puerto Rico, if I go up to the mountains, there's just a variety of wonderful red ochres that you could see in the hills because of the tropical nature of the country. And they seem to lean towards sort of an orangey color, a lot like, the color that I'm trying to replicate here. This one in particular from France seems to be sort of a true red color. And then I do have a Venetian red, which I don't have handy right now, but it is a sort of a cooler red, sort of like a purplish red in nature. So there's a full range of red ochres, and I just advise everyone to just shop around. Um, uh, if you're in New York and you stop by Kramer Pigments, that store is just wonderful. It's like a candy store for any artist, and you could just walk through and just choose the right shade for you. Remember that the color changes, even as you just saw that the color changed when I mixed it with oils. So just be aware of that as you're choosing your pigments. Okay, I have another question. Uh, let's see, from Iman Muini. Thank you, Iman, for coming by. Appreciate the visit. Thank you for this video. I would like to know how to make a drawing pencil from natural sanguine, and which of your courses teach this technique. So wonderful. Thank you for coming by. And yes, so that's a great question. So in the course that I have that's dedicated to natural drawing techniques, the classical or drawing techniques of the old masters is called. That's the course that you want. It has a full demonstration on how to use wax and sanguine. to make crayons. Now, that is not the only way to make them. There's many methods. Some masters use, beard and clay. So there's many binders, but the one that I found the most useful and the closest to the natural sanguine, which is very hard to find, was the wax crayons, which Leonardo da Vinci describes, and that's the technique that I teach in the All Masters Drawing Techniques course in Udemy. You can find the link in one of my video courses. I will be sharing a link in the description below when the video finishes. So, or if you want to send us a private message, I will, I'll be happy to share that link with you. All right. Well, again, thank you for your wonderful comments, your wonderful questions. And, I just want to thank everyone for coming by. And before I go, I just want to tell you I'm extremely thankful for your wonderful support. We've been growing the channel. We're at 2,000, I believe, subscribers. I never thought that there was so much interest in these materials and techniques of the old masters. I will continue with the live streams, and in the future, we plan to do more videos, focusing on different masters and different materials. So, and more demonstrations, of course. Thank you for your wonderful support. I want to invite everyone to join my, to follow my Luis Borrero Art Instagram page. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We also have Facebook. For those of you that are interested in the classes, you could log on to ateliersanjuan.org. That website has information for my courses, my live online courses, which I give critiques. We work together, one-on-one. So a lot of resources, a lot of information. Once again, thank you for coming by and commenting and posting your questions. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell your friends. All right. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.